Welcome to another installment of the Writer's Block. I'm Barry Tramel, sitting in for Jenny Carlson here at the Oklahoman in Oklahoma City, and I'm joined by old pal Cedric Golden down at Austin with the American Statesman. And Cedric, on Wednesday night, a huge event in Durham, North Carolina that rocked the entire basketball world. Zion Williamson, the great freshman at Duke, goes down in the first minute of play with a knee injury. His Nike's sneaker blows, down goes his knee. We don't know his status for the rest of the season. People are calling for Zion Williamson to sit out the rest of this season to ensure his pro prospects. The entire sneaker industry is up in arms. What do you make of the events at Cameron Indoor Stadium?
Man, it had so many layers, Barry. It was a cataclysmic, destructive, eye-dropping occurrence at Cameron Indoor Arena. Corporate America was rocked. Nike is up in arms. I don't blame people who say that Zion Williamson should sit out the rest of the year. He's the next LeBron. Nike's probably going to give him $150 million as soon as he declares for the NBA draft. And now you're looking at one of their prized bulls, and his shoe blows up. And now I'm sure Reebok and Adidas and New Balance and Puma are all going, how do we take advantage? There's a little crack in the armor. Can we get after the monolith that's Nike?
Well, you know, we talk about his status as a player. Mike Krzyzewski, after the game, called it a mild knee sprain. But we're here in late February. We're not that far from March Madness. It's possible that he would not be able to return, but a lot of people in the NBA saying, hey, pal, you shouldn't return, even if you get the clearance to play. How do you stand on the idea that Zion Williamson should or should not continue to play for the Blue Devils?
Barry, it's a business, and he's given Duke Blue Devils fans so much to be happy about this year. He's been a modern-day Charles Barkley, dunking on people. But at the end of the day, you have to look out for number one. You are going to make a lot of money playing NBA basketball, and very soon. So if I'm looking after myself, I'm going to say that I'm going to sit out the rest of the season. I'm going to miss the tournament. I'm going to shake Coach K's hand and say, thanks for bringing me in. But there are about 250 million reasons that I need to be 100% healthy for this time next year. This is my livelihood. This is something I'm going to be doing for the next 15 or 20 years, and I'm not going to mess it up by playing for free. If the next time I get hurt at a basketball game, I'm going to be playing for the Clippers or the Nuggets or the Kings or somebody like that, not the Duke Blue Devils.
What's interesting to me, you brought up the shoe contract a couple of times. Zion Williamson probably made himself some money last night in the shoe business because, as you said, Nike is going to have to come after him even harder. I mean, this is sort of an embarrassing situation for the shoe giant, and for them to be able to retain Zion Williamson wearing their Nikes is going to cost a pretty penny. They'll probably do it. Zion Williamson might have made himself even more money last night.
No question. Barry, he probably made another 40 or 50 million dollars. The first thing Zion Williamson's representatives are going to say to Nike are whatever number you had in mind, add 50 million to it, or we're just going to go to Adidas. We'll go to Under Armour. We'll go somewhere else, because number one, your product blew a gasket on national television with millions of people watching. The number one player in college basketball went down in a heap, and now you've got to explain that, and now you've got to give us some I guess in the housing industry they call it good faith money. Give us some good faith money on top of that 150 million or so you were going to give us to begin with. So you want to shore us up, just make sure we're in good hands with Nike. Bring back up another Brinks truck to my driveway, in other words.
Well, it sure is an interesting development in college basketball and in the corporate world. In keeping sort of with the corporate world, let's go to our Say What segment. And in recent days, The NFL and Collin Kaepernick have reached an agreement to settle Kaepernick's lawsuit of collusion by the NFL to keep him from playing pro football. What do you make of this agreement, Cedric, with Kaepernick and the NFL? What does it mean going forward?
Well, first of all, it means that Colin Kaepernick had the NFL dead to rights, because the NFL doesn't lose in court, Barry. Tom Brady couldn't beat the NFL, and we know he's the GOAT. So I think that what it means is they didn't want their dirty laundry aired in like an arbitration type of setting. Kaepernick knows where the bodies are buried, so does Eric Reed. So they wanted to make sure and ensure that they would never speak of this publicly. So here's X amount of dollars or what have you to ensure that you stay silent. Does it mean that Colin Kaepernick plays in the NFL again? I don't think so, Barry. I think his playing days are over. But what it did do to me, it shined a spotlight on a problem area in American society: police brutality against unarmed African-American males. So Kaepernick did sacrifice 2 years of his livelihood, of his prime earning years, to speak out on this subject, but he also got his money back in the end. I hope he invests wisely, because I don't think he's ever going to play in the league again.
It's going to be a tough call for an NFL team to employ him just because of that corporate situation with customers, potential sponsors might be outraged. I do think, though, that it's possible. You mentioned Eric Reed. The Panthers have signed Eric Reed, and I can see where a team might take a flyer on Colin Kaepernick. We'll see. You're exactly right, though, Cedric, about the NFL not wanting the dirty laundry. I think it's pretty clear that the NFL feared what could come out in discovery, even if there's no smoking gun, even if there's no hard concrete evidence of collusion. I think just what they might hear from an owner who the owners aren't always the smartest guys when they're talking. They could let something slip that the NFL didn't want out there. I think you're right. This was a case of the NFL wanted no more part of this story. We'll see about Kaepernick. I think you're probably right, but I'm not completely convinced. I think he might get a shot somewhere. Hey, let's finish up with, in case you missed it, and an old story resurfaced in recent days. Tim Donaghy, the disgraced NBA referee who was charged with conspiring to shave points for NBA games. Big ESPN story about this whole case and how it all went down. Tim Donaghy still maintains he did not fix games, but it seems pretty clear that he bet on NBA games and did some manipulating of calls to make sure the point spread went his way. What do you make of this ESPN investigation, and what do you think it means in terms of the credibility of the National Basketball Association?
Well, first of all, Tim Donaghy is a liar, because if you're a referee and you have the whistle, you control the flow. And if you're betting on games that you're officiating, then you're fixing games. You're doing what you need to do to get paid. That ESPN magazine report was riveting, Barry. It was amazing. It was like an episode of Goodfellas. I just thought it was some of the best work they've done in quite a long time. I think the fact that the New York Post got a hold of the story and ran it before the feds could mic up Donaghy and expose some other refs probably saved this league, Barry, because imagine if 5 or 6 high-profile refs were caught shaving points. Imagine the avalanche effect that would have had on David Stern and his precious league. Just as LeBron James is coming into his own, and Dwayne Wade and guys like that, the league has never been in better shape than it is right now. But if they had not been just like a one-time thing with Donaghy, if there had been like a half a dozen refs or even more, it would have been an epic collapse, and this league would have been pushed back 25, 30 years. All that work that Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird did would have been for naught.
Well, when you look at this whole story, the one thing I got out of the ESPN piece is just how many lowlifes, how many shadowy figures, some of them with ties to the organized crime, were involved with Tim Donaghy. and he relatively got a small amount of money compared to the big money that was floating around in this entire scam.
Idea, Barry. He had no idea how much power he wielded with that whistle. He could have made millions upon millions of dollars. He's getting a couple of grand. He could have bought his own island if he had been thinking bigger.
You know, and this goes back 100 years to the Black Sox, the White Sox scandal, 1919 World Series. You know, the players get paid relative pittance compared to some of the money going around. We go 90 years without another major scandal in terms of betting on the professional sports level. Do you think this cut into the credibility of not just the NBA, but professional sports?
Absolutely, Barry, because there are gamblers everywhere, doctors, lawyers, and are we really going to be that naive and assume that referees aren't gambling some way or another, indirectly? Maybe your wife has an account. It's out there. As long as there's a chance to get free money in America, there are people that are going to take that chance. So I know I always have an eye. I always have a side-eye glance to some of these games when things start to happen that seem out of the ordinary. The cynic in me, Barry, always goes, I wonder if the fix is in. I just always have that radar about me. So nothing surprises me anymore. Donaghy didn't surprise me. And what it probably did, Barry, is it probably put a lot of these refs on alert. And if any of them were involved in some nefarious activities, they cleaned it up. But you can't tell me there's a 100% citizenship rate in any professional sport. As long as there are people with financial problems, there's going to be someone that's willing to cut some corners.
Well, I'm not a cynic, and I tend to not believe in conspiracies. But when you read a story like this, it shakes that confidence. To me, the NBA, there's a couple things I assume they have done, I hope they are doing, and can continue to do. One is make it more financially viable for an NBA ref to keep his job. These guys are paid well. I think the average NBA referee salary, I believe, is $200,000. I think if you kick that up, make it even more advantageous for these guys to keep their jobs. They have less incentive to get involved in unscrupulous means. But also, the failure in this entire story to me is the NBA security for not IDing Tim Donaghy early on as a potential trouble figure. This was a guy clearly lacking in moral fiber, a guy with a lot of loose ends, a guy that was not a trustworthy fellow. The NBA security needs to be able to identify those guys early when they go to work for the league office. Hey, Cedric, it's been fun. We will do it again next week. Either Jenny or I will sit in with you for another episode of the Writer's Block.